A creative way to solve a problem is something that is unique to a social innovator. We have a program that we run with secondary schools. It's called the Leadership Ethics and Civics Program. And part of that program is teaching people leadership. We have a leadership curriculum, but at the end of doing that curriculum in the classroom, and they learn all sorts of things from leadership, communication, negotiation, problem solving, time management. Part of the requirement for graduating from that course is they have to do what we call a change project. And what's a change project? A change project is an initiative where you identify a problem in your local community and you come up with a solution to solve that problem. And it could be any problem. But for one person who went through that program, a problem he wanted to solve, or what got on his nerves, was pure water papers that litter the streets. And how do I get rid of this pure water problem? For him it was, okay, how about he engaged the ladies who sell pure water and asked them, how many sachets of pure water do you sell on a daily basis? And they told him a number. Let's assume, for argument's sake, it was 1,000 sachets. So working with the local authorities, local government, he thought, if I request that if we make it mandatory, instead of chasing the women, the people they call Kai, they're the authorities who stop people from street trading. Instead of chasing these women away, why don't we make it a requirement that for them to sell pure water here, they need to give us 1,000 sachets of pure water every day as part of the requirement for selling here. So what happens now is the women who are selling pure water are after the people who are buying the sachets of pure water to say, can I have your sachet? And even when they're not the ones who sold, if they see a stray sachet of pure water, they're picking it up because it's adding towards their daily quota that allows them to sell there. So that way you're solving a problem of litter, and then you can take those sachets of pure water and then recycle them. Now that is a creative person. He came up with that. That was his project. Is that project scalable? Is it sustainable? But there's creativity there, and perhaps you can develop that model and see how you can use that to drive environmental sustainability. So creativity is critical, and someone who genuinely wants to solve a problem and is able to galvanize others around change, I think. Those would be my key three.
Yeah, I want to add the aspect of passion, the aspect of tenacity, and the aspect of failure, but this time failing forward. Most times, social innovators are afraid to launch out because they are afraid of failing. And what I always tell people who are afraid of failing is that you are not ready to learn, because it's from failing that you will learn a better way to do it. And I don't believe that there is anyone out there who is successful who has not failed in one way or the other, and they learned something from it. So for a social innovator, if you fail, you don't stay there. You brush up, you get up, and you go back to the drawing board and you look at what is the system I'm putting in place. And that brings me to part of our criteria in our shocker. Sometimes people come to us and say, hey, this person is doing something great. How come you guys didn't put that person through the process? Why are you not considering this candidate? And we always tell them, it's not about just serving a social good. It's about the system you put in place to solve the problem. Many of us are solving problems, but we are dancing around the problem, and we are not putting system in place to solve those problems. And what usually happens is that once that problem, because you are not building systems, so once that problem becomes daunting and it's no more sexy, you just dance to the next one. You move on to the next problem that you expect will attract more grant. So when you have that mindset, you are not building a system, you are not going to scale, and you are not being sustainable. So these are the things we look at. And another thing is the issue of impact. Many people think that impact is just on numbers. It's not. Impact can be also looked at in the collaborations, relationships you've built. What are you leveraging on? You see, when there's a social problem, one thing an entrepreneur should always ask, what are the things that exist already about this issue? How is it being addressed? What systems are people putting in place to address it? And then another thing you look at is, where am I going to learn from? You know, most times we want to wake up in the morning and become CEO, chairman overnight, and it doesn't work. What happens is that we crash. So we need to go through a learning process. Every social entrepreneur, no matter how smart, must always remember that area of apprenticeship where you learn, because you are building a system. Do you want to run something based on emotion, or do you want to run something based on structure that will last? Learn. And it's so important. And it's so unfortunate that in our culture today, many people don't want to learn. They just want to launch out. I feel that for a social entrepreneur, launching out is even the last thing. Because when you finish learning, another thing you need to do is ask yourself, what are the available resources? What are the existing resources that I can leverage on, given that you do not have the financial capacity to do so many things? You have to find out the available resources you need to leverage on. You need to look at, what collaborations can I build? What relationships can I have? What institutional bodies will really love what I'm doing? By the time you look at it from that point of view, you are now ready to launch. You will make sure that you're launching from that knowledgeable base. I don't feel that a social entrepreneur should just run out. Yes, passion drives us a lot of time. We are driven, we are consumed by the idea. We want to solve this social problem. We are so much into it. But in as much as we are consumed, we have to remember that what we are setting up is something that we want to outlive us. It's not something that is going to end with us. So we are not looking for me, myself, and I identity. We are looking to build an institution. So those are the things that a social entrepreneur should always have in mind. Looking at, what are those connections that I need to make? And talk about your idea. I said it yesterday in the educational summit. I don't believe in this thing people say, you are going to steal my idea. I see it from the point of view of replication. If you consider my idea so important and so lovely, and you want to replicate it, please go ahead. Do you know what? It's part of my skill. You are spreading it. It's part of my skill. But one thing you will never do is do it the same way I'm doing it. Because you always bring in your own story, you bring in your own trajectory, you bring in your own experience to bear in that problem. So please go ahead and copy my idea. Replicate it, because you are not forming, when I'm making references, I can make reference to you as part of the people that helped me spread. Because you took what I did and you took it to another level. So please share. So a social entrepreneur must always share. Don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. And then another thing is that when you are building relationships, don't build relationships, especially with organizations. Don't build relationship with just a person. Build relationship with institutions. Because what happens is that when you build relationship with individuals, remember that people always move a lot. People are always looking for greener pastures. So imagine you have built this relationship with this individual, and you get there, the next day the person is no more. You have to start afresh. But if you build a relationship with the institution, they already know what you are doing, what you stand for. There will always be someone that will take up the course. And that's my advice. Thank you.
I want to go to the other extreme, talking about social innovators. Where do you find them? They are everywhere. They are in every home. And we need to identify what is it that they have. Some of the people we actually call social innovators are those who have gotten to the stage where you can see what they are able to do. But to find them, you can find them in every home. And there are certain basic things that a social innovator has. And like one of my colleagues said, at times when we talk about social innovators, our mind keeps bringing us to technology. But there are social innovators in different areas. There's a few qualities that they have. One is curiosity. You must have a curious spirit. And you can pick that even at home. You also have to be a person that thinks. Innovation is about thinking. And then thinking that there's always a better way. And that's why you have innovators are always, they're never satisfied with that you have done good or that this works. They're always saying there's a better way. And when you start seeing somebody who is always curious and saying there's a better way, that's a social innovator in the making. We need to identify them why they are at that making stage. The other thing is, in terms of what drives social innovators. Sometimes we assume that social innovators are very honest and good people. Yes, we assume that, you know, they love Nigeria. Some might not even have, but they believe in the human ability to do things better. So they will take something that they have seen, they want to make it better, not because they necessarily want to create a better world. So you have innovators that just test ideas, they interrogate ideas. So when you begin to see a child that questions a lot, and that's why each time you see children, we put them down. Why? How? Why? They are trying to understand. You begin to look that there are social innovators everywhere. We are going to the stage of how do we tap them. Now, the social innovators we are going to have, the next group of people, are not going to come from the most expensive schools. They are going to come from rural schools, village schools. All they need is just opportunity to test out the ideas that they have, which they have not been given. And that is why I see that the future of where we are going, you're going to have people who run small programs in small schools are going to throw up brilliant people who are thinking of solving a problem, and not necessarily those who are propelled by the need to be called a social innovator. Another issue we need to understand is that innovation is not about implementation, it's also about ideas. That you can develop something and then you're not the one that will see that thing. I think that's a place where we are not looking at. In the sense that you think that because you can write a code and an app, you will necessarily get people to make that app well utilized. So you have to understand, no. Your innovation could be just coming up with the ideas. But like my colleagues are saying, seeing partners that can help you see that that's your idea come, you don't necessarily have to be the one to do so. So I think that part of what, in looking at where we find them, is opening our mind that innovators are everywhere. We need to identify those who are curious, those who want to solve problems, and those who care for other things other than themselves. That's also important, that you care for other things other than yourself. You care about your community. You care about security. You care not just your own. Not just that the fact that, okay, there's no electricity, I can buy a generator and you can power. No, you're also thinking about what are people who cannot afford it. Those are the questions that give rise to innovators who are thinking of new ideas. Look at simple ideas, like somebody who felt of a way to preserve tomatoes without putting it in the fridge, a way to drink cold water without a refrigerator. Those of us who grew up when we were small, how did you make sure that you drank? We used to drink cold water without fridge. How do you do it? A pot. Somebody thought that not only did they make that pot is smoked, so it gives flavor to, it's an idea, there's a better way we can cook. So that curious spirit, we need to begin to find people who have curious spirit and not think that they are troublesome people. So I think that if we begin to expand our idea of where innovators will come from, then the difficulty we are having of identifying innovators only as people who have certain skills already. So we'll bring them together and say, no, let's have those who have that spirit. So there are so many places, and when we come to how to nurture them, I'll address them. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Find them everywhere, and people are being social innovators as of their life. That it takes to actually mobilize people, build the ideas. So you can do it, you in your household, you for yourself, to solve the problem for you. What does it take to be the person that can actually build the system that would actually scale the idea? Because while I agree, yes, you can find people, and if you go into every home in Nigeria, every neighborhood, you'd find people who are doing things in very different, innovative ways to solve their own problems, but it's never scaling beyond them. What exactly would it take for us to be able to get people to be able to scale ideas?
One important aspect of scaling is recognizing your constituency in that idea that you are running. Recognizing people who you can partner with. You know, if a social innovator is alone, that social innovator will not go so far. But if a social innovator is part of a brand, probably, or part of a group, that social innovator will go far. I use myself as an example. When I started off leveraging on available resources and all that, and given the cultural problem I was addressing, and being fueled with the injustice, by the injustice that I saw with the women, not getting their property rights and all that, one thing that worked for me is an endorsement, and that endorsement is a shocker. I will always say that I would have gotten to where I am now, but it would have taken me longer. So I always advise people with ideas, listen, look for partnerships, look for existing brands, look for endorsement. Because one thing about being part of a known brand is that when people who understand that brand know the rigorous effort you go through to be part of that brand, they respect you more, and more doors open. And you find out that you can scale your work. You are involved in coalitions all over the world. You are called into it to come and share your insights. And then as you are sharing your insights, what is happening, your idea is being replicated all over. So one thing as a social innovator that wants to scale, you have to recognize that you don't have all the solutions. Because that's the mistake many of us make. We sit down in our office thinking, I have it all. I don't need anyone. And once you do that, you have limited yourself in how you will scale. So you have to recognize that there are people in the space, people who are probably doing something close to what you're doing, and even people who are doing something that does not concern your idea, but there are certain learnings, like maybe in organizational structure, things that you need to learn from them. You need to go and make those relationships. Another thing that has worked for social innovators that want to scale is volunteerism. Having that at the back of your mind. It's not all about money. You could volunteer to an organization and just learn the rudiments and learn how to run an organization. You don't learn that by sitting alone in your office and just doing your thing. So you need to volunteer in certain organizations that you feel they have reached a particular peak and that there are certain things you need to learn from them. But unfortunately, volunteerism is not a culture that is spreading so much in Nigeria, and that breaks my heart. Because I know it's going to solve a lot of unemployment issues. Many young people graduate out, from university, they do not have the requisite skill to get a job, and the jobs are there. But imagine if during holiday period, those young people were volunteering in certain organizations. By the time they are graduating, they have job skills. Because most times, it's not the maths and English you learned in school that they are going to ask you at the interview place. It's not. So it's important that we know these things, that you can't be all by just sitting down and running that your idea. You have to look for partnership. You have to look for places you can leverage on and scale and grow.
So how do we even find those guys and scale the innovation? Like I know we say innovators are everywhere, but it's not every one of these everywhere that can scale. The ones that can scale, where do we find them?
If you know the answer to that question, I would be very happy because we're always looking for, since we started the Social Innovators program, we're always looking for young people, some young Nigerians who are doing interesting things to solve social problems. And I won't lie to you, it's not always easy to find people. one of the things that we struggle with also is, like you said, at what point do you bring somebody onto the program? Do you want to bring somebody up and then someone who is showing the potential for social innovation and then steer them in the right direction, or do you want to pick people who are already doing great stuff? So one thing that we've done with our Social Innovators program, while we are looking for people who are doing exceptional things, we realize that there are people who are not necessarily, who haven't had the opportunity to discipline their thinking in terms of problem solving. Part of what we try to do with our Social Innovators program is bring them together, a fellowship of young people who are passionate, who have demonstrated some of the qualities that we've discussed here today, who are passionate, who are leading some sort of positive change, who have identified a social problem that they want to solve, and we bring them together and we take them through things like problem solving. We take them through things like even, clarifying your vision. What is that problem that you are really trying to solve? Is this the best way to solve the problem? For example, systems thinking, is this the best entry points to that problem? Should you be partnering with somebody? Or are you just treating a symptom rather than the actual cause? Getting them to sit down in a room, share their thoughts, and have their peers challenge their questions and their comments. Also bringing them together to learn communication skills, because you have to talk about what it is, what your idea is, what it is that you're trying to solve, because that's the way, you gather information. Are you able to articulate very clearly what it is that you want to do or what your plans are? So we bring them together and have that conversation. But partnerships are important in identifying social innovators. You can't find them on your own, and they're far-flung. We are trying to find people who are doing interesting things across Nigeria so that we have a good representation. So we talk to people in local communities. We put out our calls with organizations that engage with social innovators. If you hear about anybody who is doing anything interesting, let us know, because we have this opportunity. The Social Innovators program actually partners, it's an offshoot program of the Youth Action Net, which is a global fellowship of social innovators created by the International Youth Foundation. So it's an opportunity to network with other social innovators across the globe. And this is where what my co-panelist mentioned about endorsements is crucial, because you meet other people who are doing similar work, who have walked that walk and faced the same sort of challenges that you face. And iron sharpeneth iron. When you engage with these people, you see how they solve their own problems, how they're able to overcome the challenges and the disappointments and fail forward and learn fast, and you're able to pick up a few things from them.
That our work is slightly harder. For a pure entrepreneur, if I call it that, someone who's only a pure business, person's thinking about the financial bottom line. For a civil society, you're thinking about the social bottom line. For a social entrepreneur, you're thinking both about impact, but about financial sustainability. How do you balance that as a social innovator?
Yeah, I think that talking about scaling up, I think that one of the things we must understand that scaling up is probably almost at the end of something you have tested and you found is scalable. Therefore, people don't just wake up one day, you have an idea that have not been tested and you want to scale it up. And scaling it up also, and running organizations actually involves other things other than your personal skill or passion. And that's what the transition between the former CSOs that we have and the CSOs we had now. Before, people were just driven by passion, compassion, and passion. I care about the widows, so I want. Now, you don't only match your compassion. You actually learn the skills to be able to deal with that. So it's not just goodwill that I want to change Nigeria. It requires some level of skill. It requires you to learn management. It requires you to learn accounting. So there are processes you need. So the idea is not just part of it. You need to have a system. And that is what makes replication easier, because you already have a process that somebody, if it's just an idea, You're only replicating an idea, and like she said, somebody can turn that idea into 1,000 different ways of doing it. So one of the things is understanding that there's a process beyond just having the skill or the talent to do so. I think that's fundamental. The second is actually talking about volunteerism and mentorship. Is that at times we look at the end result of successful social innovators and we forget how they got there. We forget the failures, the mistakes, and all that. So we can look at CC Hub and say, oh, CC Hub is doing well. There was a time in CC Hub that only 2 people will come if they call this event. Why don't, as a social, we need to study successful initiatives in order to use that as a roadmap for our own. I think that is an area that is lacking. We are not studying successful. We just think they arrive at success just by chance. My colleagues are talking about partnership. It takes a lot. You learn the mentorship and the willingness to learn and even to postpone the outcome of your achievement. At times you want to achieve something next month. But learning might take you 6 months. Are you patient enough to do what it will take for you to arrive? I think that's also a few things that we need to be mentioning. And we are not telling the story of our, how will I put it? We are not telling the story of our success and failures. You know, when you interview a successful man and you say, oh, it's as a result of hard work. Break down to me, what does that hard work involve? What is it? Our community life project is about 23 years. And so if you come to our office, we are in a block of 4. But we started in a room. We started with personal TV. We started with biro and going to places. There were no cameramen, no walking, you're building. And those skills, they are skills that you're learning. This is important because if you then want to test these your ideas, you need to understand that it involves some failures and some challenges. And I think I needed to put that on the plate in order to then talk about sustainability and funding. It's about trust, whether you are a CSO or whether you're non-profit or profit, you're delivering result to somebody is investing in you. They might not want the profit back, but you should have a product that is delivering impact for somebody to sustain you. So it is the same process that non-profit and for-profit use in terms, and CSOs and non-profit need to understand that. You need to have good systems. You need to have good staff. You need to put structures in place. So it's not as if that as CSOs are non-profit, you recruit unqualified staff. No, you must understand that the difference really is that you're working not for personal profit, but you're working, the profit you're making is actually in the people. So once you can deliver, you will get support. One of the things is that if you keep pursuing money, my boss used to say, he said, when we are discussing ideas, he said the money is the easiest part. And we will laugh because we know it's difficult. But he said, don't think about the money. Think about what you want to do. Think about your work. The money will do what? It will come. But if your motivation is how to get money, you're going to be tailoring your program to where money is. Are you getting what I'm saying? So I think that one of the things of getting funding or getting financial support is create a system that people will see that works, have value. You will get supporters. And that's how you get volunteers. That when people see that what you're doing is beneficial, people will volunteer. The level of volunteerism is low, but it's actually picking up right now. During the election, young people were volunteering to spend 2 or 3 nights working for free because they feel they are part of something big. They feel so. One of the things I think is important is that people must see the value in what you're doing. It is the value in what you're doing that will make people support you and you're able to deliver results. And I think that is it. But if you're driven by the fact of, oh, we need money to sustain, no. Develop a program that works. Partner with people who you can leverage and who would validate what you're doing. And that, I mean, it works. Some of us, like me, people don't know. I like to be associated with people who are already successful. I might want to do a program alone, but I know that if I put budget there, the program would have, I will go to budget and say, can we do something together? Because I'm doing with somebody who has similar values and who will add, who will validate, and budget will know who to work with as well. Because the people you partner with also shows others what kind of organization or what kind of social innovator you are. So I think that funding is a challenge. All of us are grappling with it. But I think that the solution to it is not to chase it, but to do something, and the funding will chase you. And I'm sure that's why funding is chasing CC Hub. These issues, but I know more about Community Life Project and the work that I'm doing. So I can share what we are doing, but we keep doing it in a different way. And that's why I said you don't need to tie yourself down as an organization. 10 years ago, you wouldn't expect Community Life Project to sit in a place where they are talking technology, because we are far away from, we're grassroots people. That's who we are, and we remain grassroots people. But what we have done is that as the world is changing, we also need to change our strategy and said, how can we use technology to make sure that the people we are working with are still not left behind in this technology divide? So you keep renewing yourself, but you remain focused. Because what we are doing, and the challenge I want to throw to people like CC Hub is that now there's unemployment. You have people with computer skills. You have people with, there's no job, so you call for they come up and they want to develop solutions for problems that don't exist, just because they can develop an app or something. That's why the process of recruiting, identifying social innovators, we need to be a bit more long-term to look at potentials and develop them, rather than look for ready-made people who have already found brilliant ideas. There are people who are still grappling, but you know they have that spirit. Let's look for these ones and develop them. It's going to be long-term, but I think that's where the future is, rather than looking for people who you think already some have the idea, but they have none. And I think one of the things we need to provide for innovators is the space to be innovative. It's not there. Some people are brilliant at home. There's no environment where they can work and they can think. We can help just by providing that space for them. We are developing innovators. We are supporting them, even without supporting. And I was telling somebody that also the lack of the economic pressure often stops us from innovating, really. Because we are thinking of where the daily bread will come. And this, my idea, might not produce money in the next 10 years. So you spend all the time trying, and that idea, if we can support, and like Ashoka is doing, and I think more people, pay these young people, provide funding so they remove stomach infrastructure needs. You will have more people produce things. And if I'm a funder, and I'm hoping to be an angel investor, invest in the foolishness of people and don't put target on them. They will develop things. But when you're thinking of what is sellable, what is marketable, you restrict your innovation. You're trying to, where there's market, even though you know that is not where the problem is. Because at times the solution today might not be profitable, but it's solving a major problem. That if you solve that problem, that your innovation becomes something novel. So I'm hoping that there will be fund that will support people and give them some relief from economic pressure, and innovation would increase. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
All right. I just want to add, sometimes we feel that every organization is looking for those people that have been properly structured, set everything in place and all that. We don't in Ashoka. You see, there are those that we support that we call the early stage entrepreneurs. And honestly, they are the most exciting people, because they are at that stage where they are thinking, they are just designing, they are trying to find ways of doing it right. And you provide that, Ashoka provides that platform where they can actually come in, because the 3-year stipend takes care of everything. Rent, any bill you might have, your internet, your bills, your electricity, because we all list them out. What is that thing as an early young entrepreneur that will stop you from being focused? We list it, and we cover it for 3 years. Why 3 years? We believe that within those 3 years, taking away this stomach infrastructure from you, that you are going to position yourself, focus, strategize, and look at your space. Make the necessary connections, build partnerships, and network. And also use the endorsement to get other resources. That's what we believe. And we have actually done a research, and we have found that those 3 years of a young entrepreneur's life is very critical to whether he or she will move to the next level or not. So don't always think that many funders are just there looking for people who are ready-made. But let me tell you one secret. Even in those young entrepreneurs who are starting off, do you know that even in that their early stage start-off, they have skill built into it? They already know where they are going. They know that it is critical to leverage on partnership, on collaborations, and build relationship. And most of them have even gone a step further to identify the relationships they need to build. So don't come and feel that I'm early stage, yes, I'm going to come to Ashoka so that they will support me, and you don't have any system in place. It's not going to happen. So those systems are important even from when you are thinking about the idea. So remember that there are spaces where you can be nurtured, but have you put in the requisite system that requires you to leverage on those platforms where you can be nurtured for you to actually come in to be nurtured? So those are the things you need to think about. Thank you.
So in rounding up, and thank you very much to the panelists, a few things, and I'll just spotlight that I've heard from the conversation. So one is that we can find social innovators everywhere. We just need to find people who are curious about the problem, who are already doing something about it, and whose capacity we can build to engage and create something tangible that's sustainable from the ideas. But in the later part, there's also been quite a bit of talk about how do we create the space for people to experiment, to test things out, to be while knowing that they can fail, but the failure at that stage won't necessarily be the end of them. And we need to think about, we need to be long-term. We need to think about it in the long term, look for people that we can build who have the stomach to do this for the long term. And then I guess the other thing that stood out for me is how do we mine the stories of our successes? How do we mine the failures from our successes? I think if there is a collective failing that maybe our race, maybe our country has, is that we don't do enough reflection and sharing of the things that we have gone through. Like you said, it's easier to tell the beautiful story at the end. But I wish I could read Dangote's bio to hear the things he went through to become who he is today. And maybe that's a challenge to the social innovators, social entrepreneurs in the room, and to our organizations. How can we do more about sharing our stories so that we can attract people like us? Because the truth is we live in a country where the scale of the problems and the number of the problems are many. And at the same time, alongside all those problems, we also have a huge case of youth unemployment. So if you have lots of young people who have no jobs, and you have lots of problems around which we can build innovation, how do we start sparking those connections? And the intention of this session was not to find the answers to that, but to provoke us with questions. So I hope we're leaving here with questions that we can start working on. Thank you all very much for your time, and I give the panel a round of applause one more time.
The lady who mentioned the fact that, when you have an idea and you do something, and then there's so many other people who do the same thing that you're doing. But now the problem is, when all these other people are doing the same thing you're doing, and then you want to express to people that what you're doing is so unique, and you actually need to make money from it. And I don't think you would feel happy seeing people copying and replicating your idea when you haven't even, made any money from it.
As a social entrepreneur or innovator, you have to constantly recreate yourself, reinvent yourself. Because there's really nothing that you are doing that is absolutely new. There's always someone doing it somewhere. By keeping your story to yourself, you are not opening up yourself for learning. And when I say you have to continuously reinvent yourself, You find out that organizations that are 25, 30 years, they are doing something fresh all the time. They are not sitting on their oars and feeling that we have all the design, we have all the answers, so there's nothing else. Immediately you get to that point, it begins to die. So being afraid that someone will steal your idea because you want to really make a name and make money from it does not come into it. What happens is that, have you learned that thing so well that you have created a niche? Most of us do not have our idea, nurture it, hone it to the point that we create a niche for ourselves. We are just running something. So create a niche. People will come. You want to make money? Create a niche. Create a brand that people want to associate with. It doesn't matter. People that might do something similar, everyone will know that yours is different and they will come to you. Now, on the issue of creativity and innovation, creativity can just be me sitting in my office, discussing about issues, and proffering solutions to it, and people are running away with my ideas and going somewhere to probably implement it or discuss it further. Innovation is taking that ability to create to another level, taking it even in the fields of problem solving, taking it in the field of when you are running your organization, the problems that you come across. How do you creatively solve it? You see the difference. So an innovator has a lot of aspect of creativity because that innovator must be able to problem solve, must be able to critically analyze every situation that he or she comes across. So if you are not creative, there are going to be problems. But if you are just creative and you are sitting on that creativity, you are not taking it to the next level, it could mean that your organization will just be fluctuating. There's no growth. It's just in one place because you talk about it, but you don't have the, how will I put it, that the push to take those juices that are flowing in you to the next level. And that's what innovators must do.
Well, I was going to say that, innovation is really creativity in action or executing, taking something and executing it. That's what innovation is. In terms of partnerships, I think that one of the challenges with partnerships is you need to demonstrate before someone can consider you a worthy partner. You need to show results. And you need to show results even if it's on a small scale. People need to see something that inspires confidence for a partnership. It is good sense to not be in a hurry to partner with anyone. So I wouldn't say that there's anything wrong with people who want to partner being cautious, but you have to demonstrate that you are indeed a good partner. So what should you be doing if you're a good partner? You start on a small scale. You don't need to start something grand, but you need to show a track record. You need to show that you have passion, that you are curious, that you have the capacity to grow something, even if it is small. So if you're faithful in that small and you're able to show that, that inspires confidence for people to partner with you. That said, I'm not ignorant of the challenges with funding, but like the co-panelist said, money is not the problem. First of all, demonstrate your results. Try to demonstrate your results, and the partnerships will come. People will chase after you. I think the co-panelist said something important about the lessons that we can learn from organizations like CC Hub, from organizations like Leap Africa, from organizations like Ashoka, from organizations like your social enterprise. It's never easy, and unfortunately, a lot of the stories focus on the success and not when were the times that you felt like giving up? What was it that happened that made you want to, think of shutting down Leap or saying, I'm not even doing this anymore? And every social innovator has those stories. So we need to be asking more of those questions and learning from those examples. Thank you.